following is a presentation of Learfield IMG College. From the Georgia Southern Sports Network, powered by Learfield IMG College.
Wings up, Eagle Nation! Touchdown, Georgia Southern!
This is Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Eagle athletics.
Taking a look through all the other action in Georgia Southern athletics this past week. A lot of road action. A lot of teams hitting the old I-16 out of town.
Getting on the steel horse and taking us to parts north, south, west, wherever. Can't really go too much farther east.
Now let's return to the Learfield IMG College studios. Here are your hosts, Colin Lacy and Danny Reed.
That's a fact, Jack.
Monday morning, Eagle Nation, as we get set for another edition of Inside Eagle Nation Live here from Hanner Fieldhouse. Colin Lacy alongside the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed. Got a special guest here in the studio today, Izzy Ptacek, and it may take half the episode to explain everything she does. First off, track and cross-country runner, SAAC president, newly elected SAAC president.
Yes.
Is a intern through the Apex program with Georgia Southern Sports Properties. Mm-hmm. I'm probably leaving off about half of what she does.
But you could have a bunch of subsets from just that, from what she's done with GSSP for the last little bit.
Oh, no doubt. Izzy, appreciate you joining us.
Hey, I appreciate you having me.
So, first and foremost, having to do this one a little bit earlier than normal, because later today is going to get a little hectic.
No, this is a birthday edition. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Colin. That's the most important thing going on today. Oh, and that you're having a baby.
That's the undercard.
That's the other, yeah.
But yeah, that is why we are here on a Monday morning. Normally, we like Monday mornings as much as you do. But later tonight, I'm going to start inducing Rachel. And so baby probably won't be here till tomorrow, Wednesday, something like that. But having to move this up.
And you still don't know what it is?
No. Really don't.
You are a brave person, yeah.
No, Rachel is a brave person.
Okay.
And the last 9 months proved it. But joined by Izzy Ptacek, and first and foremost, getting to know you over the summer since you started working with Georgia Southern Sports Properties, how you do everything you do is absolutely mind-blowing.
You know what? It's honestly mind-blowing for me, too, if I'm being completely honest.
So
it's a lot.
First and foremost, track and field cross-country runner here for Georgia Southern. When did you really get excited and into running competitively?
So when I was in elementary school, I owe my love for running to my mother. She's been running since she was in high school, went to college, ran, and then ran all throughout my childhood. So I was doing, Girls on the Run in elementary school, and then really competitively running in middle school. So I've been running for about 8 years now.
How'd you end up here?
So I was recruited by, I want to say 5 or 6 different schools. And honestly, Georgia Southern wasn't necessarily on my radar. It was 3.5 hours from home. I wanted to be a little bit closer. But the coaches that I had when I first came in were awesome to me. They made it feel like a family. And that's the biggest reason why I came. It wasn't about money or anything like that.
We just mentioned you are now the SAAC president for Georgia Southern Student Athlete Advisory Committee. Just started your tenure, your presidency a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
You've been here at Georgia Southern for a couple of years now, starting your junior season technically. Why was it so important for you to get involved in SAAC?
So it's funny. I was elected, so you have to be elected to be on SAAC by a team member and a coach. When I first got here as a freshman, I didn't do it my freshman year because you're not allowed to. But towards the end of my freshman year, someone had asked me, hey, do you want to be on SAAC? It was one of my teammates that used to be here. And I was like, I have no idea what that is, but sure, I'll do it. And then when I really started to get involved with SAAC was last year. I guess it was September. We had started to break out into committees. So SAAC has the Guspies, athletes supporting athletes, social media, and community service. And I was like, I'll do Guspy's. That was a fun event to go to the past year. And Haley Pruitt walks up to our table once we're in committees, and she's like, so who wants to be the head of the committee? And I was like, no one was raising their hand. I was sitting there and I was like, I'll do it. And that was honestly a life-changing moment for me, because if I wasn't head of Guspy's committee and been with Terry working on it as much as I was, I wouldn't be where I am today. That's for sure.
Talk about what SAAC does for those that may not know exactly what the Student Athlete Advisory Committee does. You just got back from New Orleans as part of the leadership for Georgia Southern down in the Sun Belt Conference meetings, but what exactly does the Student Athlete Advisory Committee do here on Statesboro?
So what my job is I am a communication line between senior admin and head coaches and student athletes. But SAAC's job is to make sure that we're getting out into the community and doing everything that we can to make the student athlete experience better, but also make sure that everyone from Georgia Southern is involved with athletics.
What's it been like working with the relatively new administration with Jared, Chris, and everybody?
Awesome. I love Jared and Chris. They are just so awesome to work with, especially Haley Pruitt. Hey, you said, how do you do all that you do? Ask Haley Pruitt that question. Ask Haley Pruitt. She is amazing. But yeah, I trust them with every decision that they've made, especially, I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute, bringing in new coaches, but they're awesome.
You started with the Apex program again this summer, working with Georgia Southern Sports Properties, Terry, Cam, Taylor, and that crew. When you talked about getting to know Terry through the Guspy's process, but what really made you want to get into the Apex program and get with Georgia Southern Sports Properties? So
I didn't really know. I don't know what I want to do right in this moment after graduation, but I thought that, working with Terry and kind of seeing the sales side of things and building professional relationships would be a good first start. And he was so good to Logan and I, working on the Guspy's. And I was like, this would be a great first step to kind of see where I'd like to go in my career.
All right, since you've been involved on our side, what have you gotten your hands on thus far?
I think the biggest thing is building professional relationships. You can be taught that in a classroom, but until you put it into practice, it really means nothing. And so that's been the biggest thing that I've gotten out of this experience so far. And then also seeing how everything works behind the scenes. And from a student athlete perspective, it's so interesting to see what you guys do for us and how little we know about it and what all has to be done to make this whole athletic department work as a well-oiled functioning machine.
We had Glenn Hart on here a couple of weeks ago to talk about the Apex program, but as a student athlete, how cool is it to have that at your disposal, being able to take advantage of all of that?
It's amazing. It's amazing that we even have that. And going back to being at the Sun Belt Conference this past weekend, I had learned that there's a lot of schools that don't have all that we have, like Sports Psych, Apex, all the committees that we have through SAAC. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone before me that has made this what it is for me to make it even better than that,
You talk about being in New Orleans last weekend, being able to not only get the ideas of student athletes here at Georgia Southern, but connect with everybody in the leadership roles of SAAC across the Sun Belt Conference and the conference office as a whole. What was that experience like for you, just starting with the leadership side of it?
So it was amazing. Going into it, I was like, are people not going to share their ideas because it's a competitive conference? But going into it, everyone was open to giving advice and saying, this is how my SAAC committee runs and this is how my school runs. Let's all try to make each other better as a conference so we can really stand out to conferences like SEC and Big Ten. And yeah.
What are the goals for SAAC at Georgia Southern coming into this athletic year?
So, I can't share a whole lot. We have a SAAC meeting tonight. There's some things in the works after seeing JMU they came in, they're new to the conference. Hearing a lot about what they have done in the past couple years was really eye-opening. And, I thought we were doing a lot, but there's still more to be done. So, have me back in about 3 months and I'll let you know.
So we'll book it for October.
Maybe November when my season's over.
Yeah.
All right, sometime in November.
Let's get her finished, done running and winning championships and all that. You are a big part of what SAAC does, but you will be the first to say that you are not doing it alone. And you're not the one doing New Orleans alone. Last week, you had the rest of your administration or leadership side of it for SAAC. Talk about those folks and how big of a part they play.
So Emily Jones and Rebecca Farthing. Emily Jones is a swimmer. Rebecca is a volleyball player. I couldn't do what I do without them. That is 100% for sure. They are amazing. Emily Jones, so she is the vice president, head of community service. She took a lot of those ideas and she was already texting me in the meeting. She's texting me like, we got to do this. And I'm like, yes, girl, let's do it. And then Rebecca, she's in charge of social media, and our social media has been pretty active this summer, and we have even more ideas coming up for this year. So they're awesome. I wouldn't change who I have beside me for anything.
You alluded to it a little bit earlier, a change in the track and field cross-country program this offseason. New head coach David Neville coming down from Knoxville in Tennessee, and he just announced the rest of his staff last week. We'll jump into the news and notes part while we have you here. But James Isaac going to be with the jumpers and multi-event athletes, and then also Megan Murray going to be heavily involved with you with the cross-country and distance. She ran at both Tennessee and Michigan State, just finishing up her master's at Michigan State this past semester. But to have a whole new regime in, you talked about how being a part of the process, or a small part of the process of getting them here to Statesboro, and the admin being able to do what they did. Talk about what that process is like from the student-athlete point of view.
Nerve-wracking, for sure. And I mean, all you can do is pray that, Jared and Coach Neville, even when Coach Neville was coming in, just hoping that they bring in a great coach. And from what I've seen so far in the meetings that I've had with him, he is. And then, the two assistant coaches, just hoping that Tracy and Glenn and Jared and Chris would assist them to bring in the best people. And so far, I think we have the right people for the job.
Getting not just James Madison into the league, but also Marshall, Southern Miss, Old Dominion. How does getting so many different perspectives from not just other schools, but other conferences, other regions, how beneficial was that?
It was different to hear because, they had said, I guess they were in which conference were they before? Especially Marshall and JMU.
JMU was down in FCS.
And then American Conference or something.
The other
Marshall.
three would have been Conference USA.
Conference USA, yeah. So they had a lot of ideas and a lot of perspectives. It was enlightening to hear what other conferences were doing and how we could do better. And like I said, I was nervous going into the meetings that people weren't, it was discussion based. And I was afraid that people weren't going to come in and, share their ideas to make the conference better, but it blew away any expectation that I had. And hearing what the American Conference, Conference USA was doing, and then JMU, let me just say, JMU is killing it SAAC-wise. I think I took, I have a whole page of notes from what JMU is doing and what we can implement into our SAAC, but yeah, it was awesome.
Good.
We talked about your crazy schedule. You do a million things, but where does kind of that commitment, because when you're doing something, you're not just half in. You're all in all the time. Where does that come from for you?
Well, if I'm being completely honest, my faith. I could not do it without my faith in God. That's for sure. That's how I handle everything that I have on my plate.
What's this summer been like, not only having to juggle everything that you've got, but also being able to be a part with Georgia Southern Sports Properties and be around Terry and Cam and Taylor?
awesome. I love Terry. He's amazing. He's a great mentor. So is Cam. So is Taylor. So are you guys. And seeing how all of it works. So my biggest project so far was going through all the contracts and seeing what we offer to all of our clients. And just seeing what you guys can sell to get some money in here so we can be a successful athletic department. It's been great.
She's also gunning for our jobs.
Maybe. John at Learfield, or Mr. John.
Careful.
She came in and wrote her own radio spot and recorded it last week. And we were in there for what, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Ish?
Helpy helper. That's an inside joke. I guess I'll explain it.
Yeah, one of the scripts that I wrote didn't jive.
But this is This is one that Eagle Nation's going to hear in about 6 weeks.
Hopefully.
Give or take.
Hopefully. This is for a potential new partner. And Izzy wrote and recorded it. And in the 30 minutes we were in there, she nailed it. Because by the end of it, she would read a line. She's like, I don't like how that. Roll that back. Like,
run that back.
Who taught you that? She nailed it.
Hey, I appreciate you saying that. It was a fun experience getting to see what you guys do, because I saw a little bit of it at baseball regionals, which, holy moly, was that an experience for everyone in this athletic department. But yeah, it was cool being up there sitting with you guys and then actually being able to do it myself. It was awesome.
Finally, before we let you go, everybody talks about the excitement around Georgia Southern athletics kind of from the outside looking in. Being a student athlete here for Georgia Southern, how much excitement is around the student athlete community? Oh,
it's amazing. And I will say, being at the Sunbelt SAAC meeting, talking about how involved all of our alumni and our donors and really our athletic department, it was so crazy to hear that other schools don't have what we have. It was crazy to me. And I'm just so grateful to be at the school that I'm at and have an athletic department that we do, have you guys, have our donors, have our alumni as involved, because you can't find this anywhere else. You really can't. Hail Southern, GATA, no place else.
Izzy, appreciate you joining us this morning.
Hey,
getting to know you this summer. You're a rock star and a huge representation of what Georgia Southern is. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Once again, Izzy Ptacek, a track and cross country runner for Georgia Southern, and an absolute rock star.
She is a pistol.
Oh, I love it.
Terry's also got to train well.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Well. Now, maybe a little too well, because sometimes when her and Terry start telling stories, it gets a little off the rails.
She's one of the few that can match Terry in terms of storytelling.
Oh, there's no doubt.
We got Roger. We had a new Eagle Tale come out this morning about Terry and his first trip to Gainesville in '86. But I would think that you put those three around a table, you may not leave that day.
No, not for a while at least. But appreciate Izzy coming by, a huge representation of what Georgia Southern Athletics is from the student athlete side, and student athlete advisory committee president, intern through the Apex program with Georgia Southern Sports Properties. A huge future for Izzy, there is no doubt.
She started with us and she's still here, so we must be doing something.
We haven't run her off yet.
I know.
Diving into the news and notes for Georgia Southern Athletics this past week, we mentioned it a little bit with Izzy, but track and field cross country picked up the rest of their staff. We mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. David Neville was announced as the head coach a few weeks back, but he just announced the rest of his staff. James Isaac will coach the jumpers and multi-event athletes. Coming over from Barton Community College, he coached a couple of national champions in the long jump in his time with the Cougars. And then Megan Murray will be the cross country and distance coach for Georgia Southern track and cross country. She ran both at Tennessee and Michigan State, ran for 6 years at a really high level, was the cross-country captain as a senior at Tennessee, and just graduated with her master's from Michigan State.
Kind of rooms that Georgia Southern is going to be able to get into now from a recruiting standpoint. This is going to be a very big deal very soon.
Georgia Southern also adding another assistant coach. Swimming and diving, Amanda Caldwell hires Trevor Sisson as the diving coach, formerly at Wisconsin, or was the former Wisconsin diving state champion. Also had stops at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, Davenport University, and Bryant University, most recently, where he was the Northeastern Conference Dive Coach of the Year.
Me likey.
There you go. One other news and note, or two other rather, Georgia Southern football announcing that the Edwin Jackson Memorial Walk-On tryouts are scheduled for August 10th at Paulson Stadium. Information and everything you need if you're looking to try out, and this is only college. This isn't trying to relive the glory days. But
calm down. Everybody calm down.
All the information and all the forms you need are on gseagles.com. You need to get that to Mylan Turner no later than August 8th. But all that information on gseagles.com.
And remember that August 10th is the first day of classes, so keep that in mind for those of you that are interested in walking on to Georgia Southern football that day.
One final and a big one coming out late last week. The Sun Belt Conference men's and women's basketball conference schedules were released, adding the Marshall, Old Dominion, James Madison, and Southern Miss to the docket.
Get a chance to see all of them on the men's side, but the weird thing is that Georgia Southern will not play Troy this year.
Really?
That is the only team that Georgia Southern misses. Don't get the Trojans in football, which will be the first time that they've missed each other since coming into the league. First time not playing Troy in basketball as well. But the additions of Old Dominion and Marshall, we talked about them a couple of weeks ago in our preview of what those schools were bringing. Those schools have remarkable home attendance. They are both going to go to the top of the league in terms of home attendance. I think they're both around 5,000 per game as it stands. James Madison, we know about what Mark Byington did here, and he's going to be entering year 3 up at Harrisonburg. That's crazy to think already. Yeah. Southern Miss has struggled for a number of years, but they actually got 2 Mercer transfers, Neftali Alvarez and Felipe Hasse, 2 guys that gave Georgia Southern fits these last couple of years, so they've come into the conference. So trying to deal with them once we get into league play will always be a challenge.
On the women's side, they will see 3 of the 4 newbies into the league. You've got Old Dominion, James Madison, along with Old Dominion on the schedule. Will not see Southern Miss on the women's side, but the last couple of years, Georgia Southern, both men's and women's, and you've had travel partners for all but 1 year. The Georgia Southern was in the league.
Yeah.
That first year was a chore. And you're not getting fully back to that, but you don't have the travel partners anymore. And so you have some interesting travel. It's not every week this time around, thankfully. But you don't have the travel partners anymore, so it's not like you're playing Troy and South Alabama.
Correct.
On the same weekend, or you go to Alabama the whole week. Like on the women's side, there's a couple of interesting road trips. You got Coastal Carolina on a Thursday, then Marshall on a Saturday. That's not a terrible one. The big one, I think, is January 19th on a Thursday. You're at James Madison. Then that Saturday, you go to Monroe, Louisiana.
That's a little bit of a haul.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a drivable trip. The other interesting trips, Old Dominion and then App State on a Thursday, Saturday. That one's not awful. South Alabama and then Georgia State. That's not bad at all.
If you're on the road for both, I get it because you're already on the road. But when you've got the split weekend, you've got to do a little bit of both. There's one on the men's side where you've got, I believe, James Madison at home and then going to Coastal, which for the men, not that bad. Just go basically due north and then turn right after about 3 hours, and you have a chance to get to Conway, Myrtle Beach. But there are instances where there is a little bit of extra air travel which needs to take place. But when you eliminate travel partners, the fact that you don't have very many of split weekends, if you're on the road, stay on the road. If you're at home, stay at home. But everybody's going to deal with this. It's not just exclusive to the Eagles.
Georgia Southern men's basketball will see Marshall, Old Dominion, both coming to, and James Madison, all 3 coming to Hander Fieldhouse. We'll have to go to Southern Miss, the only time Georgia Southern plays Southern Miss this year.
It's at the end of the year, I think.
And you've got a couple of interesting trips. You've got App State on a Thursday, then James Madison. That one's not terrible.
It's not bad.
You've got one heck of a weekend at the end of January. You're at Texas State, see our buddy Brant Freeman on the 26th, and the 28th
Now,
you go to Louisiana
We finally go there.
to see Jay Walker. So you get Brant Freeman and Jay Walker in one weekend.
See, I'm going to guess that this is the league giving us a reprieve for baseball a couple of years ago whenever COVID happened, not getting the back-to-back of Texas State and Louisiana, but we got it this year.
Yeah, we did.
We just didn't stay on the road because that was I think there was the Georgia game in the middle of it.
That's the start of 4 straight on the road for men's basketball. Then the next week, you're at Georgia State on Thursday, and then at Old Dominion that Saturday. The other, I guess, cross-country trip would be at Marshall February 16th and at Southern Miss February 18th.
Yeah, that's not an easy one because there's not an airport that's that close to Marshall unless we can get into Huntington. I'm not sure if we can do that directly, but for Southern Miss, I have not been to Hattiesburg. Baseball went in 2018 for that 3-game series, and I know we're really looking forward to their baseball program.
Yeah.
Scott Berry has done an outstanding job. They hosted a Super this year with Ole Miss. Now that they're all in the league, you officially put them in the league when the sports start, but with Media Day, it's kind of the go-between where, okay, July 1st was where all 4 of them come in, and now we actually say, hey, we get to shake hands, get to hug a little bit. We see them for the Media Days next Tuesday and Wednesday, which will be fun, and then once sports begins with soccer, with volleyball, and then with football, then it'll truly be a new Sun Belt Conference.
Yeah, next week is Media Day. It's a 2-day event this year, splitting the East and West because trying to fit 14 teams in one day is just not going to happen.
And look what the SEC has their media days this week.
Yeah,
they go
3 days, 4 days.
I think they go 3 or 4 teams a day, but now with Oklahoma and Texas the next couple of years, that may turn into a week-long deal.
Yeah, no joke. Anyway, next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, will be the Sun Belt Conference Media Days. You will be down in New Orleans for Media Day. I will not, for obvious reasons.
Be there. Get in on Monday. Be there Tuesday to talk with everybody in the East. We'll also talk with everybody for Georgia Southern. Announced that head coach Clay Helton will be joined by quarterback Kyle Van Treese and defensive end Dylan Springer. We'll also get a chance to visit with Sun Belt Conference Commissioner Keith Gill. Won't be there for the West on Wednesday. Only play 2 teams from the other side this year with South Alabama and Louisiana. But by the time we get back from that, Georgia Southern camp is going to start the next week. We're waiting for the official schedule on that, but we'll get a chance to see what the Helton bunch learned during the spring and how much more they've developed over these last few months.
Before we wrap this week's edition up, last week we just sat and told stories, essentially, of...
Which is what a football road trip is.
Yeah, pretty much. We had somebody send in, and we asked for it, had people send in their favorite memories of Georgia Southern, favorite stories, whatever, and you can continue to send those in however you would like. You can go to gssnbooth@gmail.com to email those in, tweet us at GS Sports Network, or comment on anything on Facebook. Ben Everett says, I don't know how memorable it was in the grand scheme of things, but I saw Georgia Southern on the road at NC State, and that visitor bench was an awesome place to be.
That was the year before me, so I got to yield to you on memories of that day.
You know, NC State...
I watched the game. Mm-hmm. I watched the game that day. But
and you had been to NC State...
2 years earlier.
That's right.
With the Citadel, that's right.
So NC State, their press box situation is very interesting. It's high. It's way on up there. It is... They have the normal... what looks like press tower that has suites in it and everything. Every stadium has them now. But it's got suites, it's got the writing press, huge main area press box. Well, the broadcast booths are essentially what look like add-ons on top. It's nice, but they're little pods on top. You have to go to the elevator, walk across the roof to get to your broadcast booth.
Yeah. It's labeled, though. I remember it was clearly labeled.
Labeled, the booths are great, but it's just interesting how you have to get there. Fine. Ryan Chambers was not thrilled with it because you know that thing he has with heights. But he and Gary Hahn talked about it and worked it out. They were peachy. Mm-hmm. And that was when Frank and Ryan had to put on a vest to be on the sideline. Chambers was real thrilled about that.
I remember that.
But what we normally do, and everybody's probably heard us talk about this, we get to the stadium Friday to set up, make sure everything works.
Yeah.
Most of the time it does. But The one time you don't, the one time it doesn't. We get there. We set everything up. Everything's fine. I go down to the field to test the wireless mic that Brian would be using. Not Russ yet. Ryan would be using the next day. Doesn't work. Okay, maybe we just need to change the frequency. Change the frequency. Still doesn't work. It's so high, the wireless mic we had at the time would not reach to the field.
We had the same thing 2 years earlier.
Would not reach to the field. And so I have to give a huge shout out, and I think everybody that goes to Raleigh knows this name. Dave Modlin is a savior, because I had talked to him to get in, and he was telling me everything about the booth, where everything was. And he's like, if you need anything, just call me. I'm working a Carolina Hurricanes game, but call me. Okay.
Because it was right. They play right across the parking lot.
Correct. And so I'm like, I got nothing. And I'm thinking maybe there's like so many frequencies, like I don't know what's going on. So I called Dave, and he answers not with hello, not hey man, how's it going? It's wireless mic not working. You do this often? He goes, yeah, about every week. Yeah. He goes, I've got an extra one for you. You'll be fine. Okay. So Dave Modlin saved the day. That's the only way you were able to hear Ryan Chambers.
Thank God.
So that's my NC State story.
We had the exact same thing. Lee Glaze, the sideline guy we had at the Citadel, had to wear the vest. We had to change up the microphone because it had to fit the wireless that they had.
Yep.
So ours, we put all of our stuff away. But once it got to the field, it was perfect. And then the NC State Wolfpack beat Citadel 52-14. But it was a 7-7 game at one point.
Yikes.
That was after the 3-0 start, when the Citadel had beaten Georgia Southern on the last second missed field goal in Charleston. Then the next week was what Citadel people call the shock of the rock, going up to Boone and beating App State. The Citadel had gotten to as high as, I think, number 10 in the country, but still ended up winning 7 games that year. But NC State was definitely experienced.
That NC State game is one that I think Georgia Southern people will still say that the Eagles should have won.
Oh, yeah.
It's one that a fumble on the 1 yard line, maybe the half yard line, as Georgia Southern was going in, would have taken the lead and all but put that one on ice. That one was... There was a lot of really close calls the beginning of that year.
You could go to Georgia Tech, but that would probably be best served for another episode.
Yep. That'll be a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
But that'll wrap up this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. Again, next week, be back with a new episode, a new guest, and a new everything.
Our usual time.
Yeah, we'll be back to usual time.
Breakfast with the boys could work, but
yeah, no.
But in all seriousness, I know you got a big few days, so very happy for you two, and wish you nothing but the best these next few days.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, so everything will be coming out on the next couple of days, and when it happens, you will know.
And of course, Izzy, for giving us your time this morning.
Appreciate it. Is Izzy asking to come back?
We've never had this before.
I am. I just wanted to say thanks for having me. Thanks to everyone that's made my student-athlete experience better. And happy birthday, Colin. That's the most important thing. And you're having a baby.
She needed the headset to say happy birthday.
And it ripped out as I was putting it back on. So I didn't even hear myself.
Now she's a true radio person.
Oh, this is awesome. For the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, for Izzy Ptacek, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Inside Eagle Nation, powered by Learfield, the official podcast of Georgia Southern Athletics.